Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 56. As always, I'm joined by Dom. How's it going, Dom?
Yahoo!
And Jordan. How's it going, Jordan?
Happy holiday!
It's April, so
Holidays somewhere near.
although it's a holiday for some people today.
Yeah, that's
Happy
true.
holiday!
I saw the greatest picture was a Baze from Rogue One. It said just Baze, and it was a picture of him, and it was like hashtag 420, like just Blaze.
Just Baze.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
I see what you did
Yeah,
there.
really funny. Anyways, a pretty slow week for me as far as what I've been playing. Pretty much been just grinding away at Dark Souls 3 achievements as I was last week. Bought both of the DLCs. Haven't played them yet because a lot of... So I've got a majority of the sorceries and pyromancies and all that stuff, but the last couple of ones I need are based on Covenant items, and
worst.
you either do that by invading as part of that Covenant, which I'm not a huge invasion guy. I don't like being a dick, like invading somebody else's game and just ruining their experience. So it's the other way to get them is just by attacking enemies in their rare drops. So I've just been having to grind. I got to a point I was grinding Silver Knights. I had 1,000,000 souls at one point, which is pretty crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, and I don't have the Symbol of Avarice, which is the Mimic Chest helmet, and that also raises item drop, and I just was unfortunate to get it. So it's just all this grindy stuff to try to complete the game. Nothing too interesting. But yeah, it's pretty much it. I haven't been playing much else. Haven't really watched much else. What have you guys been doing?
Horizon, Zelda.
So you
yeah.
did get back to Horizon.
I did quite a bit too. I think I'm getting close to the end of the main story. Still some of the hunting ground things I gotta catch up on. I climbed all the tall necks. Those things are awesome. I wish there was more of them though. I think there's like 5 or 6. So that was kind of a bummer, but I guess that's part of what makes them so cool though, is like how infrequent they are, and they're just, I don't know, it's a spectacle when you stumble upon one, and it's just this huge mammoth thing that shakes your screen as it walks
It is
past.
cool, yeah.
It makes you feel like, if you had watched Jurassic Park when it first released. It's that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm just grinding away. I want to get that platinum, but I want to first just get through the story, because I'm like real scared of spoilers right now, and I'm actually really into the story. It's a pretty cool sci-fi thing they got going on. I won't get too deep into it, but I want to just get that story out of the way, see what happens. And Zelda, just started getting into the final, my final Divine Beast dungeon and so on, in the Goron village up there in the old Flamin' Mountain. So that's another one. I want to finish that story at least for the same reason as Horizon, just to get it done, so I don't have to worry about spoilers, and then I can just kind of roam free and eventually get through all those shrines at least. Definitely not going to get all those damn Korok seeds.
You're doing all the shrines?
I want to, yeah. I mean, I'm not in a rush or anything, but first I want to beat the game, and then, get all 120 shrines, afterwards. And if it takes me another year, that's fine. I want the experience to be spread out, so.
Gotcha.
I'm already at like 50 or 60, so.
With both of those games, I'm at a point where I've done not all the side stuff, but just a large chunk of the side stuff, and it's not that I haven't touched the story, but it's like that's the point I'm at, is I need to kind of stop and play the story for a little while.
So those two same games I've been playing for 2 months now, so still grinding away. It's gonna be a while longer too.
I'm interested to see when both of you finish Horizon, to see if what I read in that NeoGAF thread in like January is true. Because remember, I don't know if you guys remember, I stated that I actually got the Horizon Zero Dawn story got spoiled for me because I was going through NeoGAF and I saw this thread of the story leaked potentially, and it tells you the big twist of the game and everything that happens in the game. So I'm interested once you guys finish the game and you guys talk about it, and we'll have like a spoiler-filled discussion, if it matches that rumor that happened so long ago. I'm really intrigued by that, so we'll see.
I bet you about 95% it is exactly what you read on NeoGAF.
Yeah, probably. What have you been playing though, Jordan?
So, haven't played a bunch. Actually been watching a ton of movies this week. And before I get to that, I want to say Fargo Season 3, Episode 1 premiered. And that was last night. And wow, man, that's easily one of the best shows on TV. Like I say, time and again, FX knows what's up, both with comedies and drama. But I mean, their dramas are just so good. Legion, Fargo, they're all, I mean, they don't really have like a Walking Dead where it's like, I mean, it's a good show, but there's seasons that are just shitty. Like, if FX has a show that's just not that great, you really don't see it for very long. So, shouts out to them once again.
Did you watch the newest episode of Saul?
Of course. Once again, this it's just so good, man. The way it's like really starting to hit into Breaking Bad territory as far as just connecting the dots for you, and you're able to see kind of where things would get started in that direction, I guess.
I like that point of it too, because I think if not this season, I would guess that 4 is the end of it.
Oh no, I hope they go 5, man. I know they won't go past 5, because how are you going to go past 5 when Breaking Bad was only 5?
Exactly. The characters they're using, they can't cross over, obviously. So I think 1 or 2 more, and they're going to have to be done, which is sad, but I think that's the way it needs to be.
Do you think the final episode's going to be Saul meeting Walter?
So here's the thing. Minor spoilers for Better Call Saul. Actually, both of the 3 seasons start with vignettes after Breaking Bad.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what I wanted to mention just now, is I really think, and I'm really starting to doubt that they'll do this, but I would love it if they had not a whole season, but maybe if they had like chunks of scenes in like the last season, if it was the 5th season, and they had chunks of scenes or even maybe full episodes that occur during or after Breaking Bad. I think that would be awesome, but I'm doubting it.
No, I think you're right. I think the story it's telling now will probably conclude in like, the second to last episode of the series, and then the last episode will probably be just an entire, kind of after the fact, and they probably will keep it
stuff like that.
Yeah, probably keep it in the black and white like they've been doing for those vignettes too.
Right.
Just kind of like give you a different perspective of where he's at after everything. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, the vignette dove a little deeper into kind of, instead of just saying like, here's what's up, it kind of like went into a scene and had stuff going on this time, so they could just kind of dive into that a little more. I think it's obvious that we're going to see, plenty of the characters from Breaking Bad. Walt and Jesse are a surefire thing, even if it's a little cameo or whatever, they'll show up and pass by. Obviously, Gus is a big part of this season, so it's going to be cool to see how this series plays out. I'm also doubting that there's going to be very much more of the Breaking Bad universe that we see on TV, if ever at all. It's going to be
ends with this.
It's going to be cool. And then, of course, once this series ends, then it's going to be awesome to just be able to go through all those seasons, Better Call Saul to Breaking Bad, because it's just so well done. Some of the best TV ever made. So, but yeah, real quick, I'll just fire off some of these movies that I've been watching. Finally saw Logan and Split. Have you guys seen both of those movies?
Haven't seen
Just
Logan.
Split.
What, Dom?
So Jared and I both just saw Split, not Logan.
Okay, cool. So, can we have quick spoilers about Split?
Sure. Spoiler alert,
Right.
skip 2 minutes if you don't want Split ruined.
Exactly. So, are you guys like M. Night Shyamalan fans? Do you know about the Unbreakable connection?
I did not before, so.
I love Unbreakable. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's definitely one of my favorite superhero movies. I think it's really well done in the way they handle that type of stuff. And to see that they're bringing it back, to see that there's connections, to see that, M. Night Shyamalan talking about how he had McAvoy's character in Unbreakable as a major part, and then, had to pull him out because it just didn't work. But I'm pretty sure there's a cameo in there. There's people showing what they think seems like his character just as a little part in Unbreakable. But yeah, man, that stuff's so cool, and I'm really glad that it's gonna have like a third movie to tie it all off. I can't wait for that shit.
Yeah, just really quick. I like Unbreakable a lot. It was a Chronicle before Chronicle is like the way I like to put it.
Yeah. Not found footage Chronicle kind of.
No, but set more in reality, like a superhero movie set in reality, which is really cool. Yeah, I like.
I have to go back and watch that one.
Good movie. That's all I'm gonna say. So we can move on from the spoiler stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so we're out of spoilers. I'll just name off some movies that I really liked that I watched recently. I had one night where I watched like 4 thrillers just because I love thrillers. Love psychological thrillers, but I love any kind of thriller that maybe it pushes into horror or whatever. Huge shout out to The Void. Awesome cosmic horror. If you're into that type of stuff, you should totally check that movie out. I watched 10 Cloverfield Lane. Finally got through that movie. I had started it but hadn't finished it.
So good.
Don't love it, but it's a solid movie. Solid thriller, I would say. I watched... crap, what was it that I watched last night? Oh, this isn't a thriller, but I really love this movie. I watched What We Do in the Shadows, which is directed and stars the guy who is directing... Yeah, Taika Waititi, I think is his name.
Yeah.
And, or Waititi, I don't know how you say it. But anyways, he's directing Thor 3 this fall. And that movie was fucking hilarious. It's like a mockumentary type deal where these vampires are basically just fucking around. There's barely any plot to it, but it is a hilarious movie. And it's really funny. I recommend it to anybody who likes, kind of British or Australian humor. I feel like there's 1 or 2 other really good thrillers that I watched. Nope, I'm sure they'll come back to me maybe, at the end when we're talking about stuff for next week. But yeah, watched a bunch of movies this week, basically.
News time. So the first bit of news here, last week we talked about Nintendo basically shutting down the NES manufacturing, the NES Mini. Yeah, a lot of people were upset about that. It was weird, a lot of people had a tough enough time getting their hands on it. It was a problem with resellers and scalpers and stuff like that. And
they came out with a 2.0 where it was, had a longer cord and all this type of stuff that, it didn't have the bullshit stuff that they had to deal with on the first one. That'd be great,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be pissed.
According to multiple sources, though, we're actually probably going to be seeing a SNES Mini or a SNES Mini later this year, this holiday season, which isn't actually that surprising. So Nintendo is set to launch the SNES Mini this year. They launched the Mini NES that we just talked about was such a hard time for people to get a hold of, and they discontinued it recently, which got people upset. This probably means that we won't see NES Minis in the future, or at least for a while, if the SNES Mini is coming out this next year. Huge game catalog. It's going to be interesting to see what the price point of this is. If it's going to be $60 like the NES Mini, how many games are going to be included on it. Obviously, you've probably heard on the internet by now all of these lists of games that you would want on it. But do you guys think that these sources saying that this is coming out this year kind of says like, yeah, the NES Mini was discontinued and we're probably not going to see it for a while?
Yeah, I've definitely, and it's so frustrating because the timing, man, just the timing. So I'm in GameStop the other day. I'm asking about Pro controllers, and then I see the NES Mini boxes behind the desk. And I'm like, is that the real deal right there? You're not just, screwing with me. Those are actual consoles in that box. He's like, yeah, man. And he said they had them in stock for the last few weeks. And I was like, oh, I get paid on Friday. I'll come back in here and grab a Pro controller for Mario Kart and an NES Classic. They've had them in stock, so it shouldn't be too big of a problem. And then, within like 24, 48 hours, we get the news that they're discontinuing. And, of course, by the time I got my paycheck, I'm calling every GameStop in town, and nobody has one. So, fuck me, right? Fuck me, right, Nintendo? Is that what you want?
So, I think my conclusion here is that they're not really concerned with immediate profit. That's obvious, but they're more concerned with like keeping an image for themselves, like putting out these limited run little consoles,
being that cool retro Nintendo.
Right. They want to keep their image up as like, look at what we've done. Like we're so cool. Like, because why they could make so much money. These things have a huge mass appeal. They could be just raking it in right now, and they're not. And it's a mystery to everyone. I think like we're all kind of missing the marketing here, and that's not really marketing with the goal of selling more, but just for their own image. That's the vibe I get, where they're not really concerned about the cash.
So, take this with a grain of salt, obviously, but one of the chicks that I called at a local GameStop here in Nashville said that the reason that they were so scarce and that Nintendo was basically so skittish, I guess, about putting out stock and really having them out there was because they were there was a part or something that was making them more expensive. Kind of, it seemed like she was saying they were they were really not worth what they were selling. They were taking a loss probably. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but either way, it's just like, dude, this is not this console is nothing hard. This is the company that's been accused, what we'll talk about later, of selling ROMs on their eShop that are just emulated versions of their old games. Like, this is not hard shit to do. And making this console, regardless if there's one part or another, it's like with the part or the short cord and the stock, it's like, come on, this is not, I feel like if there was a PS1 Classic, which at this point I don't think Sony would do because it would just be so copycat, but you just know that Sony could be like, yeah, here's a PS1 Classic, 20 games, you can get it now, and it's not that hard to find, and it's $60 or whatever the fuck, it doesn't have this tiny ass cord where you have to sit 2 inches from your TV. I think it's just Nintendo. I don't get it. I don't get it, man.
Now with them having discontinued the NES Classic, it's going to be even 10 times harder to find an SNES Classic when they do come out, right? Because everyone is going to think in their
scalpers
head,
are going to buy bucket loads.
Right.
The next story, coming from a different publisher, we're talking about Nintendo. Bandai Namco, last week we talked about this teaser they had that was very Dark Souls inspired. They actually had the tagline at the end of it, hashtag prepare to dine, which is a plan, prepare to die. We made some speculations of what it could be. We talked about it possibly being like vampires or something. I said it could possibly be a follow-up to God Eater. And that's essentially what it is. I mean, it's a game where you eat gods. The game's called Code Vein. Really interesting premise, really interesting art style. We'll talk about that. But real quick, it basically, I'll give you guys the game overview that they actually put up on the website. In the face of certain death, we rise. In the not-too-distant future, a mysterious disaster has brought collapse to the world as we know it. Towering skyscrapers, once symbols of prosperity, are now lifeless graves of humanity's past, pierced by the thorns of judgment. At the center of the destruction lies a hidden society of revenants called Vein. This final stronghold is where the remaining few fight to survive, blessed with gifts of power in exchange for their memories and a thirst for blood. Given to the bloodlust fully and risk becoming one of the lost, fiendish ghouls devoid of any remaining humanity. There's a lot of Dark Souls buzzwords in here, for me personally. Wandering aimlessly in search of blood, the lost will stop at nothing to satisfy their hunger. Team up and embark on a journey to the ends of hell to unlock your past and escape your living nightmare in Code Vein.
Sounds like Bloodborne right there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I want to talk about the art style. We have a couple of things about the game. One of the biggest things is they talk about creating your own character and then choosing a partner that will go through the game that has their own combat style and backstory. So those characters are pre-made. And that's pretty cool because it gives some incentive to replayability, right? All these characters seem so different if they have different combat styles and stuff. Could make the game easier, harder, different. There could be different event triggers in the game depending on who your partner is. So I think that's really cool. I really want to dive into the art style real quick, though. So we were talking before the show that this looks like it's heavily inspired by a lot of other Gothic type games, like the Bloodborns, like the Dark Souls. And it's funny because the characters in this very Gothic dark world, but then you look at the actual faces of the characters and they're very anime. So I just want to hear from you guys.
It's like futuristic cyberpunk type weapons and stuff too, right?
Yeah. So it's a really cool mashup of a lot of different things. And yeah, I just want to get your guys' initial impressions on Code Vein now that we know what this game is and what we kind of can expect. We haven't seen gameplay necessarily, but we have enough stills to kind of get a feel for it.
Yeah, I'm real excited about this actually. I think I've played a bit of the God Eater games and they're whatever. They're definitely not knocking your socks off, I would say. They're definitely not knocking everybody's socks off. They're knocking some people's socks off in a niche audience or whatever. But I definitely think these developers are capable of making a great game. And this is kind of in that Japanese double A. I think people talk about double A games disappearing, but I do think there's more than people realize. Your Just Cause 3s and your Neos and stuff like that. I honestly think that Bloodborne and Dark Souls are more double A than triple A. Just kind of the way that they look and feel and how you interact with the game, the menus and such. It's not a slight on them, it's just how I see them as categorized. And so this kind of looks like really similar to how Neo took the Bloodborne formula essentially and did its own thing. It's Samurai Bloodborne, of course. I don't think this will be as close to Bloodborne. I don't think this will be like gothic cyberpunk Bloodborne, but I do think Dom, I was actually going to point this out to you. I think we're going to get a lot more. We've been getting these Dark Souls clones or Dark Souls heavily inspired games for the last few years. Lords of the Fallen, and then all your 2D stuff like Hyper Light Drifter or Salt and Sanctuary. But I feel like we're going to get a lot more Bloodborne clones, how we have Neo and now this. I feel like this is going to lean more towards Bloodborne.
Yeah, I'm rolling through the screenshots right now, and it's tough to describe. So, it is a cool mashup, like you guys both said, of I could name like 5 games. It looks like this took something from, and the art style is really cool, and just the creativity and the design of some of the characters and monsters and so on is really cool. Like graphically speaking, it looks like one of the God Eater games, right? Where it's not really up to par of games nowadays. Like looking at the textures on the character models and stuff, it's some of it. Now who knows? Like these are just screenshots of who the heck knows, but that's just an observation. But yeah, this looks cool as hell. I'm pumped to see more about it. So
the reason I say that I think we'll see more Bloodborne clones than Dark Souls is I think if you're trying to have not necessarily a mainstream hit, but just a broader audience, hit a broader audience and bring these like really tough, hard ass, tough as nail games and actually sell it to people, then I think it's a lot easier to make that fast-paced Bloodborne combat than it is to be like, yeah, it's a lot more like Dark Souls where it's slow and plodding and still tough as fucking nails. So that may be why we get more clones towards the Bloodborne end.
Yeah, maybe. It's an interesting thing. Like, I mean, if something's getting inspired by Bloodborne, then it is getting inspired by Dark Souls because Bloodborne is inspired by Dark Souls. So it's like
I guess I'm talking about like more the combat,
the speed of it. Yeah. It's interesting. I think a lot of people like both Bloodborne and Dark Souls, but I think there is a camp of people who are more pro Bloodborne and more pro Souls, and that argument can happen forever. But I do.
For example, Neo is clearly has more Bloodborne than Souls generally. Obviously, like you said, if it has Bloodborne, then it has Souls, period. But Neo is a very Bloodborne-y type game.
Yeah, but Neo is also original in a lot of its stuff because it isn't an open, interconnected world. It's these like set places you go to, you fight there, and then you leave, and then you go to a new place.
Right, and it has a lot of Ninja Gaiden connections, which Souls has a lot of Ninja Gaiden connections. There's all that,
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think this is going to be faster paced as opposed to slower paced. It definitely brings more as obviously it's a action RPG, but it seems more so heavily into JRPG. Right? It looks interesting. I think the graphic fidelity, it is the textures are a little bit lower quality, but I don't think that's a huge concern for me as long as the gameplay's solid. That'll win me over 100%. It's not like bad, but it's not like pristine. So I'm interested to see gameplay. I think that's where I'll definitely make my decision as to whether this is a game I'm going to be getting, or if it's a game I'll hold off on sale, or if it's a game I don't even worry about touching, whether it's good or not, just based on the gameplay, because screenshots can only do so much. It's like, oh, this looks like this, and this, but does it play like this, and this? So we'll definitely have to wait for that and see more about the game. But it's cool to see a name attached to a game, and no wonder they use Prepare to Dine, because it is heavily inspired by, Dark Souls. So it's really cool. My only problem with this whole thing, and doesn't even need to be a huge topic for us to talk about, I hate that all of these news outlets made it a point that they couldn't talk about it being Bandai Namco's new IP. All of them wanted the clicks, so all of them said Dark Souls publisher. All of them said Dark Souls publisher, which kind of bothered me. It's like, well, I understand that, but Bandai Namco's been around a lot longer in different forms. Obviously, Bandai Namco, way before Dark Souls. So it's weird to me that Dark Souls isn't all Bandai Namco has, and they just wanted those clicks. So whatever.
Just in general, I think it's really cool to see. We're not. We talked about this last year around E3. I don't think we're necessarily seeing a Japanese renaissance, but we're definitely seeing a resurgence from Japan that is really cool to watch right now, and I think this will be part of it. Obviously, Neo and Gravity Rush and Nier, all the stuff that's coming out right now is absolutely part of that too. So
I think they've always been around, but I think that they're making a stronger push to market in the West. I think the games have always been around. It's just I think that they've
adapt their rules of how they operate to kind of work more globally, I guess.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like the East gets inspired by the West, and then the West gets inspired by the East, and it's like this back and forth thing that's really cool to check out. The last news story here, we talked about a while back after episode 3 came out. Please, episode 4, don't have the hiatus that we had to wait for episode 3, and we don't. The Walking Dead: A New Frontier episode 4 comes out April 25th. A little over a month since the last episode, but it's definitely not the 2 to 3 months we had to wait. A week after Guardians of the Galaxy, which is huge. And to me, this seems like they're doubling down, and they want to finish Walking Dead so that way they can focus on Guardians and all the other projects. And I don't think that means it's rushed by any means, but I do think that they're putting extra effort into, we can delay Guardians episode 2 for maybe 3 to 4 weeks extra. Let's make sure we finish Walking Dead and worry about that first, because The Walking Dead is a series we focused on and it has a lineage,
Well, I think they're going to try to have Guardians episode 2 out right around that movie, though.
Well, the movie came out this week, didn't it? Or does it come out next week?
No, it comes out May 5th.
May 5th, okay. I've seen like a lot of press for it. It seems like it was coming out this week. Like heavy press for it.
Oh, they just started allowing press to watch it.
Yeah, but they've released like 98 teasers, so I assumed it was coming out this week. It's a whole nother discussion. They've released too many goddamn teasers for that movie. Anyways, super excited for episode 4. I don't know if you guys saw the promo image for it, but it shows David in a very precarious position with a noose around his neck, which looks crazy. The episode, I believe, is called Thicker Than Water, which is a really cool title. I'm excited.
The way they set this up is going to be great, man.
Yeah. I'm super excited for this. I think we all are. We're all going to look to play it next week and have our impressions on next week's episode, so definitely look out for that. I don't know if you guys have anything to add there. We're just all excited that it's coming out really soon, right? Sooner than we expected.
Just since we're talking about Telltale and we mentioned Guardians, I was going to say I went ahead and got Guardians because it was discounted for a certain time if you went ahead and picked it up on PlayStation Plus. But I am going to wait, just like I did on Batman. I'm going to wait for all 5 episodes on that. And, Walking Dead is... We're doing that on the podcast every time it comes out. So
actually, you know what? I'm going to join you on that. I was going to play Guardians because I bought it. I'm just going to wait. I'll wait for the 5 episodes with you. That sounds good.
I think Walking Dead is that one Telltale series where it's like everybody's really into it each episode,
Yeah. And, I mean, spoiling something in Guardians that I don't want to get spoiled isn't as crazy as getting spoiled for something with Walking Dead, So I'm with you there. I think I'll just wait. Dom, you're excited too, right? I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Of course.
Yeah. Just getting our hands already.
Oh, Guardians is one that you actually like, right?
No, he hasn't seen Guardians. That's the one we tell him.
I thought that was the one Marvel movie that you had seen. Motherfucker.
No,
I've seen a couple. I don't want to... There's so many. How could you have not seen any?
I think the newest one he saw was Civil War, right?
Yeah, so that was a good movie.
Dom, your homework is to watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2014.
I don't know. We'll see.
Walking Dead: New Frontier episode 4 comes out next Tuesday. We recently had the Star Wars celebration talking about all the new Star Wars stuff coming out, including The Last Jedi and obviously Battlefront 2. Dom, you wanted to talk about Star Wars some more, right?
So, real quick, I just want to say something real quick. Sorry to interrupt. I know I've already mentioned this on the podcast. I'm kind of going media black on a lot more trailers recently. Not watching any trailers for The Last Jedi. I don't want to hear a peep about Last Jedi.
We're not talking about Last Jedi.
No, I'm just saying, if
Just
it's
in
like,
case.
if it's like, I'm really excited about this new Star Wars game because, in Kylo Ren, the new trailer is like all blah, blah, blah.
He's got to put his foot down and make sure.
I just got to say, I'm not going to be that all over the internet, but just on our podcast, if we could just not talk about that movie, that'd be great.
Well, I won't get into it, but I'll let you know that the Last Jedi trailer, I caved and watched it. There's pretty much nothing that it's basically nothing. It's just like a hype.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Sizzle reel.
I've seen a couple frames, and so I'm
Yeah.
perfect on it right now.
But anyway, let's get into it. So we caught a leak of the Battlefront 2 trailer last week in our discussions. The full trailer since came out, and a bunch of information came out on the game. Not too much more than that we found out that we didn't already know. They're going heavy on the campaign. No season pass, but they said they're going to figure out something else that's better. I don't know what that means, but
well, if it's like they do with the fucking BioWare games, where it's like no season pass, but we'll just charge you, that extra $5 to buy the DLC individually.
Well, their reasoning was they didn't want to segment the multiplayer community. So that there won't be separate maps or something. It'll probably be like cosmetic microtransactions or something like that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Also written by Mitch Dyer, or partially written by Mitch Dyer, which is cool.
Yeah, the story?
Yeah, Mitch Dyer is
wow.
writing it. Yeah.
So real quick, since we're on the topic of this Star Wars game, I definitely feel like the fact that you're playing as a female in the story is kind of, they're pushing that. I mean, obviously, like Marvel, like all the heroes now are either gender swapped or racial swapped, and they're trying to really push that diversity thing. It seems just like the mainstream big movies and media is trying to do that right now, and I feel like I'm totally cool with it. Obviously, I can't wait. I love playing as Aloy and love playing Gravity Rush as Cat, blah, 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 but it definitely feels like this is part of that,
Yeah, but also think about how many Star Wars games you've played as a woman. None. So I understand where you're coming from.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like they're trying to build up the portfolio so in a few years it can be like, well, now we have 3 or 4 games where you play as a woman. We got a few movies where women are the stars and stuff.
Also, I think too is we're not gonna, without spoiling it, if you've never seen Star Wars, I doubt this person is going to be in the next Battlefront game based on the way the story is shaping up, right? And where it takes place and everything. I highly doubt that the next game will be her as the protagonist. You can also assume too, Visceral and Respawn might have games where it's like more RPG where you create a character so you can create a female or male. I just think that the writers were like, hey, we can write a Star Wars story, and it's hard enough to fit a story into the canon, right? And you probably have a lot of check marks you have to meet. Make sure you don't mess with this, make sure you don't mess with this. But they're like, how many Star Wars games have you played as a girl? None. And I think personally, my gripe is, it would have been cool to me if you didn't play as a human. I don't really care about the female-male thing too much, but it would have been interesting if it was a different race. But yeah, I'm super stoked for it. I understand where you're coming from. It's like you can obviously see that this is a diversification move, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is kind of obvious, So
just like I was saying, the movies are starring women, and then or just Marvel, Thor's female, Captain America's black. You can see it across the board if you just look at media, but that doesn't make me any less excited. And watching that trailer, the story parts of it is very cool when they walk up in their elite trooper suits with the black and red and talk about you weren't supposed to know we were coming or whatever. And I'm super pumped to be able to play as a hero of the Empire, essentially, and someone who's trying to retake the glory of Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, it's bringing levity to the dark side, which is cool. Sorry, go ahead, Dom.
Yeah, no, so I like the fact that you're playing as a female too, and we can get into it another day. But there's a lot of merits when people gripe on diversity for diversity's sake, but I think it's actually a good thing to spread it around. But anyway, that's a good topic for another day. We'll get into that deeper some other time. But I don't want to focus too much on just this game. It made me think of, Well, you know what? There hasn't been that many Star Wars video games that I've played, even though there's hundreds that exist. So I just want to
hundreds?
rattle off. Hey, there has to be, right?
I don't know about hundreds
800
officially
maybe?
licensed.
I think there's at least 40.
Hyperbole.
I would
yes,
say 50.
there's
Yeah,
lots.
definitely.
It's a phrase. Anyway, so I'm just thinking back, oh, what are some of my favorites? So I missed some of the big ones, like Rogue Squadron. And I never played for the GameCube. I think it was, except for the arcade version was pretty cool. But mostly, the limited experiences I have were the first two Battlefront games, which I think the very first Battlefront game has to be my favorite. I'm just gonna put that out there right at the front. Me and my brother probably played hundreds, and that's real hundreds this time, of hours of that game. Just versus each other, couch co-op. We just play over and over again against each other. Tons of hours of fun that I put into that game. The second one was a much better game, but it was kind of past that phase for us, I guess. So we didn't put as much time into it. It doesn't mean as much, but those games were fantastic. The pod racing game for the N64, that one was another one we played a whole ton. Not as much as Battlefront, but it was fun. It managed to take a cool part of one of the few cool parts of the Phantom Menace and turn it into a fun video game. Otherwise, of course, played most of the Lego Star Wars games when I was younger. And then I remember going into Family Video. We had rented, Lego Star Wars a bunch of times already, and we had beat it to completion. Me and my brother and my friends, we had beat it 10 times over, right? And this was around when Revenge of the Sith came out, and the Lego games were, of course, rated E for everyone, and the Revenge of the Sith, official movie game, was rated T. So we had to talk my parents into letting us rent the T-rated game.
I know that feel.
Yeah, I don't know how old we were at the time, but it was a big deal. So our parents succumbed to our demands and let us rent that one. And of course, if I played it today, I would probably tell you it's the jankiest piece of shit game ever. But at the time, having adored that movie, I saw Revenge of the Sith 3 different times in theaters. That was my world, right? So playing the game was really cool, and it did one novel thing of it let you choose to play as Obi-Wan or Anakin at the end, so you could actually be Anakin and beat Obi-Wan in that last fight.
I hate you!
Right, and then that would be the end. It's well, can you imagine what would have happened? But it's just a cool thing that I thought it was cool they added. So that's really all the Star Wars games I think I've ever played. So you guys got any? I never touched the Force Unleashed ones, so I don't know what you guys got on that, but go for it.
So
Go ahead, Jared.
Jared, go ahead, Jared.
Okay.
After you, sir.
So, I played the first Battlefront a whole ton. Battlefront 2, I played the PSP version, which we were talking about before the show. Played that a whole ton, but it was a compromised version, in the words of Michael Huber. Also, I played Force Unleashed and Force Unleashed 2. The Lego Star Wars games were my first introduction to what we now call the Lego games,
Okay.
So I'm sure they were for a lot of people.
Yeah, the Lego Star Wars original trilogy Lego bundle or whatever was the first time I played the Lego games as we know them, so that was fun.
Lego really cool. City on my PC, baby. That was a long ass time ago.
Yeah, and there's tons of older Star Wars games that I never touched, like Rogue Squadron and a bunch of stuff that you said. There's so many Star Wars games that were before our time or we just never got around to. Two things that I wanted to mention. One of the coolest Star Wars games that never happened, Star Wars 1313. Like, everything you see of that game looked so amazing and it looked so cool, and hopefully we get touches of that with Visceral and Respawn's games. The other game that I want to talk about is basically the biggest blue ball moment to me personally in video games.
Besides 1313.
You'll see what I mean by this, though. Because we never got anything super official with Star Wars 1313, This was at E3. When they roll out the red carpet, they come out on stage, like, we want to show you this new Star Wars game, The Old Republic. You get this trailer, the CG trailer, which is amazing. Like, that's one of my favorite video game trailers ever. Like, as far as CG trailers. Super cool. They're like, it's an MMO coming to PC, and I'm just like, cool, it's dead to me.
Yep.
It's like completely dead to me.
I remember that exact moment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All my friends
I
are
will
watching
say-
E3. I'm like, oh, this looks so cool. Love the story. Love everything they're doing. And then it's like, it's an MMO. And I'm like, well, I could care less. I couldn't care less.
Star Wars 1313 had a like gameplay trailer, right? Though, because I've seen that gameplay.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was ever, maybe, but it wasn't announced at
No,
E3.
because I
the way
remember
Old
like an
Republic
official
was.
logo fading in and stuff.
I don't think that was at E3 though. I could be wrong, but like
Maybe not at E3, but I feel like that game was officially revealed. I'm just saying as far as blue ball moments and man, Old Republic, like every time those Blur trailers come out for a new expansion, it's a blue ball moment. I'm like, God damn, these yellow fucking lightsabers are killing me. I want to be doing that. I want that story. I want those cutscenes. But I mean, the cutscenes in the game don't look anything like that, of course. Unfortunately, they would if they were like a modern console story game, like Battlefront 2 or whatever. But yeah, it definitely sucks.
Okay, so I just real quick, I went to the Star Wars 1313 wiki page, and I was wrong. The game was officially revealed at E3 2012 the following
I
month.
thought so.
Yeah,
I thought it had like a reveal thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it had a reveal thing in 2012. And then obviously in 2013 it was announced that they ceased internal development on all LucasArts projects. So that's what happened with Star Wars 1313.
Yeah, and dude, I bet there were some badass games just getting started around there.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting some good stuff. Hopefully we can finally see
Sure,
what Visceral
sure.
and
Yes.
Respawn's working on. But like, I just wanted to mention, we're talking about our favorite Star Wars games. Star Wars 1313 is like my favorite game that I never got a chance to play from everything I've seen. And then
sucks.
Star Wars: The Old Republic is like those CG trailers. They're so good. Like
Oh yeah.
they could be their own movies. Like Blur, just make a Star Wars like standalone Old Republic movie. And just
I know, man.
deflating the air from a balloon, dude. Deflating the air from a room. All of my friends, I'm telling you, we were sitting there watching E3. Everyone is getting excited. My friends are huge Star Wars guys. The moment that they say it's an MMO, everyone's just like, well, let me know when the next thing pops up on E3 because this is dead to me now.
This is going along right with what you're talking about, Jared. I'm once again seeing into the future with my crystal ball, and I'm seeing the fact that people talk a lot about these DC movies and like, oh well, the animated movies are great, but the live action universe is shitty. Well, and then people talk about how we're going to get a Star Wars movie every year for the rest of our life. Well, I'm looking into the future, and I'm seeing a few years from now where we're getting like, just kind of like how we have every few months a DC animated movie in the same universe, and maybe it's a 3D animated, maybe it's 2D animated, whatever, but I'm totally thinking that we'll be getting a lot more stuff like that. They just announced some animated shorts coming out, like that are all focused on the women of Star Wars, and so I definitely see that stuff coming down the road. Maybe not as great as like a whole Blur trailer movie, but whatever.
Yeah. Before we close out, you want to tell us what your favorite Star Wars games are?
Sure, yeah. So I'll just list Star Wars games that I've played. I may not have necessarily beat or gotten that far into the story or whatever the fuck it is, but I think, have I told the story about the arcade game at Chuck E. Cheese on the podcast? Where the kid helped me beat it by giving me all his freaking coins. All my coins and all his coins finally helped me beat the game. So there's that. That's a great Star Wars experience. That is, I think, just Star Wars arcade game, like the original Star Wars arcade experience. I think they just came out with a new one, so this would be the original one. Came out with a new one for Force Awakens, I think. Anyways, so yeah, a lot of Star Wars games have great parts to them, like the Force Unleashed games, I think, have really cool stories. They're not great stories, but they're cool. They're interesting fanfare if you're into Star Wars, if you like, cool Jedi, gray Jedi, stuff like that. But yeah, Force Unleashed 1 is a good game. Force Unleashed 2 is a okay game. It's kind of a 6. It's super short. It's just whatever. So there's a lot of games like that, unfortunately, for Star Wars. I'll give a shout out to Pod Racer on N64. That's a fun little game. Kind of a kart racer, but with pod racers, obviously. And then we've got our KOTORs. I haven't played KOTOR 2, even though I've watched some of the cutscenes online. But I've played KOTOR 1, and I love that game. Probably my favorite Star Wars game, if I had to choose one. And you talk about these blue ball teases with the Old Republic. They're making expansions in the Old Republic that are still connecting back. It's all in the same timeline with KOTOR. Like, the Old Republic MMO is part of the KOTOR timeline. So technically it is kind of KOTOR 3 in a way. That's why they probably haven't made a straight up KOTOR 3. Which is, obviously very confusing because that's old canon and that's not technically canon, but they're still making new expansions that are connected to that story. So it's weird balance there, but at least the KOTOR experience is still going in some capacity. Other Star Wars games, I'm trying to think here. Give me some examples here. I haven't played... Oh, Battlefront, of course. So, the new Battlefront's cool. I enjoy it. I've played it a decent amount. The old Battlefront games, of course, are very special. 1 and 2, I would say I played a ton of, both on console and then the PSP version of 2. It was different, but it wasn't as good, but it's still totally fun, still totally awesome. And then my brother Jackson still has Battlefront 2 running on the PS2 over at my mom's house. I played that like within the last 6 months with him, so love some Battlefront as far as classic Battlefront, I should say. And I am excited for 2, the new 2. Even though I was talking about, I don't think they would call this new one 2, because then you're going to have 2 Battlefronts and 2 Battlefront 2s, but, whatever. There's a fucking Battlefield 1 now, so who knows, but, yeah. Love Star Wars games. I am very excited about the future. The Amy Hennig game looks cool. I hope it has better gameplay than Uncharted, even though it's not going to be like lightsaber stuff, which I'm cool with. But I'm totally down with her storytelling. And then, I talked about Battlefront 2 coming up. I'm really excited about the games we don't know about, which are in the pipeline, which are happening, which are, probably going to be like big single-player awesome games, maybe big single-player RPGs that are long, like, Horizon type long. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Also, think about this, and this is a complete slide at EA. The great thing about having Respawn work on a Star Wars game is that they can make another quality product, and if you make the stupid scheduling mistake you made with Titanfall 2, it'll still actually sell because it's Star Wars.
That game, I'm definitely excited about it because it's Star Wars, but obviously we know zero zip except it is made by Respawn. That's the only thing we know. So I'm I wouldn't even say cautiously optimistic. I'm optimistic about that one. We just need to...
One of the biggest things we talk about is lineage with video game developers, and they made COD 4, which is one of my favorite games of all time.
Sure.
The original Titanfall was a fantastic game. Sucks that it was a console exclusive. Titanfall 2 was also a fantastic game, and that game got screwed over as well because of its release scheduling. But those games on their own are fantastic games. They haven't sold well, but I don't think it's entirely Respawn's fault because they've crafted really, really good products. So working on a Star Wars game is awesome, and I can't wait.
It's a pretty good chance, obviously, that their game will just be, a 10 to 12 hour first-person shooter with a big online component. Even though that's kind of Battlefront's already taken that spot, but that's really their bread and butter. So what do you think about that? Are they going to make, some
They're making
third-person
a Boba Fett
RPG? Game. You think they're making the Boba Fett game, so is it going to be first-person shooter or what?
Yeah, I think it's going to be first person.
Republic Commando style?
I think it's going to be first person, and it wouldn't surprise me. They could even do stuff because they're so good at making multiplayer where you jump into something else you control. They can do stuff where you hop into the vehicles. That's one thing that Battlefront doesn't really have, right?
Yeah.
Where you're a character and then you hop in. You can control them, but it's a disconnect because you're the character and then you hop into this plane and it's a completely different person, So they can work around it. That's going to be interesting to see what they do. a lot of the, I mean, none of us played every Star Wars game, because that's impossible. A lot of the older Star Wars games, unless you have the older consoles, you probably can only play them through emulation, which, is a huge thing. And you actually wanted to talk about that this week, emulation in general and what it means to you.
So yeah, we're talking about emulation today on the show. And speaking of old emulation, I want to say this before we dig too down deep. You were talking, in that beautiful little segue that you gave me about how certain games are only available at this point through emulation, right? There's just no way that you're going to be able to play a lot of these old ass, rare ass games. It's like you can't even get some of these consoles running at this point. So, how do you expect to play without emulation? I mean, the biggest point that I want to make, like I said before we dive in, is the reason I'm really okay with emulation is because of the fact that really there is no, especially one of the big three, but there is no company with a proper solution to playing the breadth of the history of video games that we should have at our disposal digitally. And we talk a lot about video game history just in the industry in general. That could be a topic for another day, of course. But this is a part of it. The fact that we just don't have access to, easily half of the games that have been released since the start of video games. Easily more than that, I would say. And it just sucks. Even with emulation, there's just so much stuff that we just do not have access to, and that's really dumb and really sucky. And you hear things like, I was watching Digital Foundry's video for the Kingdom Hearts 1.5, 2.5 remasters, and it's gorgeous 4K in gameplay, and they put it up next to the PS2, and it just looks incredibly changed since then. But they're like, yeah, man, the cutscenes are, basically just the same as the PS2 versions because, they don't have the assets, the proper assets. They're like, no, wait, Jared, you were telling me that about a game. What it was with Kingdom Hearts is they had to redo a bunch of the gameplay assets to make them 4K because they didn't have them. They had to basically buy a retail copy of the game, the PS3 version, and
Parappa the Rapper
just rip
was the
those
game I was talking
assets.
about.
You were telling me about the cutscenes in
Yeah.
Parappa the Rapper. Sorry, I
Yeah.
got those two switched, but
Well, same thing. Apples to oranges.
anyways, yeah, exactly. So yeah, it sucks that these publishers are like, oh, or I mentioned Nintendo selling, they're downloading ROMs off of Emu Paradise or whatever and like selling it on the eShop. Like, what the fuck? And then yeah, these guys are at Square Enix like go out to GameStop or the equivalent in Japan and have to rip a copy, a retail copy, and get this code off so that they can up-res it to 4K. It's like, are we just not preparing? We're just not thinking about the future at all with these companies. It's really frustrating. And so, freedom throughout the universe. Emulate all you want, kids.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies see emulation as like, oh, it's a bunch of thieves that want to steal our games. And there probably is a small percentage of people who just want to play emulators because they don't want to buy old games. And that's just, they think like, those games already came out, why should I buy them again? But I think a lot of it has to do with it's the best way to play older games because companies do such a terrible job at game preservation and like not being able to bring them and keep them around to the modern age, right? So the only way we can play a lot of these older games is through emulation. Like, I want to applaud whoever did the Disney Afternoon Collection because those were well done and they hold up and they play really well and everything like that, and they add in the modern touches of like achievements and saving and rewind mechanics. And I think it's all about game preservation.
That's the stuff we need.
Yeah, and I think emulation and like third-party emulation and these people that do these is an answer to companies being piss poor at game preservation. Like, you shouldn't be mad at these people because they're quote-unquote stealing your money. You should be mad at them because they're doing the work you should be doing and you're too lazy or you don't want to invest in the work. Like, that's what it is,
Yeah. Piss poor is a good way to put it.
Yeah, and it's they're kind of just behind. I mean, as soon as there's a device out there that is capable of running something, it's gonna happen, right? Legal or not. Like even on like iPhones, that's the one friend Nintendo and Sony still has, because they don't naturally let you download emulators, right? But you could, plenty of people have figured out a way to get around that, and some sort of fancy hacks to their iPhone, and then they can download anything they want, and so on. There's always a way. When a device has hardware capable of something, someone's gonna do it. So I think we'll never, like the games we have now, like back to like the NES era, the NES era, like we'll never lose because the internet is just too large and there's just too many people. Now it may not be. I know there's people out there working on like museums and actual like organized archives of games and stuff. Whereas the internet is just crap all over the place, right? But I think it's always going to be available, and emulate like the technology behind it is cool as hell, no matter what. Like whether you think it's good or bad for you, like it's really cool that I literally just out of curiosity downloaded an N64 emulator for my phone, like my literal phone that's like 5 inches wide that I take in my pocket everywhere I go, and I can boot up Ocarina of Time.
And you could hook up a controller to it if you really wanted to go that far, and then you're just doing it.
It gives you little touchscreen controls, but that's not really. You could do that, but all you need is a little Bluetooth controller. Heck, I could even use the DualShock, and it would work.
You have a lot of options here.
Right, so it's really cool that's a thing, and it's only getting better, right? Like I've seen, there's a Wii U emulator. There's people playing Breath of the Wild in 1080p on their PCs. Now that's airing on the more on the illegal shady side, shady backdoor deal side.
Well, came out. A lot of that stuff is straight up piracy, but that's
right.
Talking about Breath of the Wild and then talking about like what we've kind of leaned into, which is like video game history with almost lost games, right? That's totally different. So
that's true of any media, right? Like look at like books. I'm sure there's probably hundreds of thousands of books that existed and now they're gone, and no one will never know, right?
And a ton of that is penny dreadful trash, but at the same time,
right,
it would be nice to have them archived or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to say, we were talking about before the show, like Jared, you were saying you're not super into emulation. I am. Obviously I want to have this conversation for that reason. And then Dom, you just brought it up, a great point, even though, you're straight up just pirating if you're playing Breath of the Wild on your PC right now. But at the same time, a big part of emulation that I really like is I'm playing, essentially, a lot of times a better version of the game, even if it's the company's come out and remastered it. For example, Twilight Princess or Wind Waker HD on the Wii U. And I'm not even talking about emulating either of those HD versions through a Wii U emulator. I'm talking about if you went back onto Dolphin, which is the GameCube and Wii emulator, and you emulated the actual GameCube versions of those games, up-res them to 1080p and add anti-aliasing and all this other stuff that you can do with emulation, and they're actually looking better than the Wii U HD ports. And so stuff like that, if you can play Breath of the Wild in 1080p on your PC as opposed to, probably like 720 or 900, whatever, on Wii U, then it's like, do that, man. And then, if you want to have the full experience, like I said, you can just buy a USB version. It'll be third party, but a USB version of your GameCube or your NES or whatever Nintendo controller, and then you're rocking, man.
And the legality of it is apparently, I had previously thought that in no case, is it legal? Granted, no one can ever know, and you can't ever be, nothing can ever happen. But apparently, and I think it was just in one state, and everywhere else is probably unprecedented, and there's no actual rule on this, but one state somewhere, I want to say Kentucky or somewhere random, I'm not sure, ruled that if you own, a copy of the game that you purchased through the publisher, then you're actually entitled to as many ROM backups as you want, which I thought was crazy. But
the fact that that's even a conversation to me is crazy. It's like, I bought the game, you've been sticking these fucking proof of purchase tickets on the back of my products since I was born and I can remember, so like, Yeah, if I've bought this game, of course I should own the ROM digitally if that's what I want. If I want to rip it, especially, if I'm going to buy the technology to rip it and put it on my PC, hell yeah, that shit's mine. I'm not saying I can sell it or whatever, but I can play it on my PC and you're not going to take me to jail for it. It's like the whole, in Tennessee, this is actually a law where, if you're sharing around your Netflix passwords, that's like a super illegal thing. And of course, that's just not really enforced, and it's the same thing with
Yeah.
emulation,
How
where you
could
see
you?
this stuff. It's like, come on, you're just Nintendo's all about this shit. Of course, it's a big thing with them, and they're all up people's asses. And then, I do not think it's been proven, but it is absolutely alleged, and there's definitely evidence to the fact that Nintendo just has downloaded ROMs off the internet for free, like the rest of us would, and then puts them up on the eShop for sale. So that's absolutely ridiculous. Not because of the fact that it's a faulty ROM or anything. I'm sure those are perfectly good, original copies or whatever, ripped off of an NES cart, but that's absolutely not the way they should be doing. That's piss poor, as Jared said.
Yeah, and just to be clear, earlier you said, which is true, I don't like playing emulators. It's not because I'm against them and I'm like,
Well, I
no,
was just
bring down
saying
the
I'm more
emulators.
into it than you are, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not into them for the sake of them existing. It's just not something I like doing personally, like doing all of the work for. I know it's not a lot of work, but for me, I have a perfectly capable PC of playing games. I own games on Steam. Rarely, if ever, do I play games on my computer just because I like the comfort of playing on a console. And I know it's dumb, and PC gaming isn't as complicated as people make it sound or anything like that, but it's just, to me, it's more comfortable to just use a controller, turn on the console, and play, as opposed to having to download the emulator. And I know it's not a lot of work, but just in the mind work behind it, you know what I mean? The gears
I get
turning,
you.
it's just like, it's... But there is a problem there of like, if I owned a Switch, Nintendo, if you had the games available for me to buy and I didn't have to go to an
Oh my
emulator to
God.
play them, I would buy them. You just make them available.
If you actually ripped the fucking cart yourself.
yeah, exactly. I think, did anybody else have anything else to say about emulators? I think we went round table.
One tiny little thing I was just going to add, there are, other benefits. You can do hacks and, filters and cool stuff in your games, mod them and stuff. And also you were saying, you like to stay on console. One point just to the contrary is that even having my, at this point, I think 4-year-old MacBook Pro, it's a great console for everything from basically 4 years older and back. So all games that have ever been on PC work in that fashion. And then I've got, I could play pretty much any NES game I want, any NES game, any SNES game. N64 is super easy to emulate. GameCube's the same. Wii is super easy to emulate. Even the motion controls you can do really well in Dolphin. Obviously now you're able to do stuff like Wii U all the way up to last generation. They're figuring out. I'm sure there's like
PS3
underground
and
stuff with
360
PS3
are, like,
and
nearly
360.
done.
Yeah, exactly. There's like underground stuff there, maybe builds you could find, but they'll get to the point really soon where those are just easy to emulate, as PS2 is easy to emulate right now, or I'm not sure about original Xbox, but I'm sure you could do that if you wanted to. And then, of course, all your handhelds are super easy to emulate, your PSP, your DS, your 3DS, and all that. So it's really cool to just have that one. My laptop is like a box of just gaming history at that point.
I think the biggest issue I have with emulation is the same issue I have with Nintendo. Like, now I don't really own a lot of physical games. Most of my stuff's digital. I like having an account, not so much for like the achievements or the trophies, but just an account where I can see everything I've played and my lineage there, just so I have a frame of reference. Because
good luck with that.
no, I have a good memory, but it's hard to remember all these games you played and stuff like that. And like, one of my biggest problems with emulation, that is a big problem with Nintendo, and it's been a problem forever, is like there's not a digital account legacy kind of thing.
Just
Obviously you have to buy
give me
games
my
over and over.
library.
Yeah, so it's hard to keep track of all that stuff. And like, I think I don't like PC gaming for the same reason I don't like emulation, and it's just that because it's like, yeah, you can make all these games better, but you have to do mods, and that's not bad. Like, it's good that you get to play these games at their best, that you can ever play them. But for me, it's not work that the outcome is worth it to me personally. But like, emulators are cool.
Sure.
Like, I had a PSP, and like I told you guys, that was an emulator machine for me. So
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, because obviously I think I play PC the least out of us three, but it is cool having that option. Like you said, you can play the game like at its ultimate settings, and then really beyond what even the developer was able to do with patches and stuff. So that's cool.
Well, my next door neighbor's dog is ushering the show out, so we should get to the end of the show. We're running a little long here. So, as far as what we're going to be playing next week, going to be grinding on Dark Souls 3. I believe we just got a review code for Xbox One for Deformers, which is the game from the guys who made Order 1886. It's published by Game Trust, which is GameStop's publisher. Going to be interesting to see that game. I don't know how long of legs it has. It's a multiplayer only game, a battle arena, so it's going to be interesting to see there. Seems like a lot of the replay value is in customizing it, so customizing your character, so we'll see how that goes. I'm going to try to catch up on Walking Dead. I don't want to make any promises. I made promises last week and I didn't keep them. Also want to give a shout out to the Cloak and Dagger teaser trailer. Boy, does that have me excited. It looks so good.
Yeah, it's looking better than I thought, definitely.
Yeah, it gives me a lot of vibes of Riverdale, the Archie show that I was talking about, and it definitely hits those same vibes, which I'm down for because I love Riverdale so much. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Not going to be playing too much. Nothing on my table, really.
Gotcha.
Horizon and Zelda.
Nice.
Never saw that one coming.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Walking Dead, obviously, but that's homework for us.
Yeah. So, just to go back to the beginning of the show, the couple of thrillers that I was talking about, I also watched The Invitation.
So good. So good.
I watched not too much of a thriller, but Kristen Stewart's latest movie, Personal Shopper, and actually didn't really love either of those movies. I thought Personal Shopper, I think, was better than The Invitation. The Invitation was rough, dude. Like,
I love that one, man.
I would say the first 2/3 of that movie are pretty close to garbage. I was really close to turning it off, and I was like, I've got to try it because I've heard a lot of people say a lot of great things about this. And then, yeah, it's like the last 20 minutes are just, hardcore, really intense, really kind of what you've been wanting the whole movie. And so I just didn't feel like it was worth it for all that weight. But I'm glad there's people enjoying it out there. It just wasn't quite my thing, quite the thriller for me, I guess. And then, so that's a couple of the movies that I was talking about earlier. As far as what I'll be doing next week, very, very, very excited for Mario Kart 8. I'm just about bursting at the seams, even though
yes.
We really won't have played it by the time we record next week, so
Friday.
It doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
It's next Friday, yeah. But there's also Puyo Puyo Tetris and What Remains of Edith Finch, I should say. And I'm so very excited about those games. I will probably have played those by next podcast. And then, yeah, like you said, Walking Dead Episode 4. And then Michael Huber, friend of the show, was recommending Into the Badlands, an AMC show with a lot of cool martial arts that's kind of maybe post-apocalyptic. And of course, I've talked a lot about how much I like Vikings and Americans, two shows that he's recommended. So that, and he also recommended Black Sails on some of his stuff. So both of those shows I'll probably be checking out soon.
No wonder the dude's so busy. He's watching TV all day.
Yeah. Speaking of TV, two more quick ones. Like I said, Fargo was awesome. That premiered this week. Brooklyn Nine-Nine came back. That show's still super fucking funny. People that worked on Parks and Rec, so if you're into that stuff, which I am, totally check Brooklyn Nine-Nine out. And then Leftovers, final season came back. And really cool episode. That's a trippy-ass show, man. It's a trippy-ass show.
It's amazing how much TV you guys watch. Like, I don't. It's crazy to me.
Dude, I pick my shows very carefully. I don't waste my time. I'll drop, like I said, there's certain shows that I'll just drop,
Yeah. But I'm not good at passive entertainment. It's hard for me to just sit down and watch a movie or watch TV. When I get around to it, I enjoy it.
I got you.
Yeah, when I get around to it, I enjoy everything. I pick and choose. I'm pretty good at picking things, but it's just like it's hard for me to personally make time for that stuff because it's just not.
Right.
I love TV as a movie, but it's not something I'm like, whatever.
Super passionate about.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's everything for this week. We're going to be playing next week. We're going to have a guest next week. I don't know who it is exactly, but we're definitely going to have a guest, so tune in for that. This was episode 56. Thank you guys for listening. Subscribe on YouTube. We're up to 86 subs. We got like 5 subs last week, which is really cool.
Whoop!
So thank you to everybody who's subscribed. We're really close to 100. Follow us on Twitter at CTRLINT for all of our latest news and updates. I'm at Jared_. Jordan is at Mellow Modus, and Dom is at Dom's Oreos. Follow us for all of the latest tweets about politics, Kingdom Hearts, and Mass Effect, I guess. I don't know. Also, leave us a rating on iTunes if you can. That helps a ton. And that's pretty much it. We'll catch you guys in episode 57, where we'll probably be talking about this weird announcement that's not announced yet. I don't know if you guys saw this. IGN talked about it, and so did GameSpot, of like, there's going to be a big announcement this weekend, and we'll talk about it next week. A lot of people are speculating the next Call of Duty is going to be announced this weekend, so we'll see.
Whatever.
Yeah, we'll have more to talk about next week about that, if it ends up being Call of Duty. And, yeah, we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.
Friends is better than Seinfeld.
Happy holiday.